Welcome, Kristen. So we're going to get started. It's the top of the hour here. I have a brief presentation to show you guys before we get started. And hopefully by the end of that, we'll have everyone we're going to have today. And if we only have a few people, I'll enable you guys so you can actually speak and we can have a conversation rather than just kind of do that through chat or whatever other functions available. So thanks for joining me today. My name is Spencer. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at Cronometer.com. And today we're going to be going over our Pro app in detail so that you guys might be in your trial or you may just started using it. We'll give you guys an overview of all of our features, and then you can ask questions and we'll see how it goes. So what will this webinar cover, right? So we are going to do a quick intro here, and then we're really just going to focus on giving you guys an overview of the Pro stuff and the Pro features. And what we're going to focus on specifically is the client experience, the user experience as a client of a Pro, and what you as a Pro are going to be doing and how you interact with that user's account. Setting goals, targets, and planning. So this is kind of the main piece that we're going to go through is how do you set up a user's account to, what tools are available to you to help them get set up for a particular program, depending on, what you guys are using it for. And then we'll also get into the data analysis tools that we have available to us or to you guys that can help you make sense of all the data that they're going to be generating every day. And if you guys have some specific special use cases, for example, we work with some clinics that do tube feeding. So they were asking about some specific use cases there. We can get into that and how you can use the features in our app to, meet the needs of that particular case. So, and as we go, if you have any questions, there's a Q&A button on your webinar UI. Just open that up and type in whatever questions you have. Now, again, there's only 3 of you, so I think I could probably manage 3 conversations. So I'll probably turn on your audio if this is all that join us today. Cool. So the question that I really want to answer today is, why would you use Cronometer to enhance your business? And so we have the highest quality, most accurate data of any of the other tracking apps that are out there. We employ, not only do we plug into really high quality databases, these are labs that are actually doing tests and creating, sharing their data, putting their data out there. But we also have our own curation team that actually goes through our databases and makes sure and checks it for accuracy, basically. And we also vet any user submission. So there's never any duplicate entries or things with incorrect nutrition information in our database. So we also track over 80 micronutrients, which is why accuracy is so important to us. And the app is really built around understanding that micronutrition data, as you guys have probably seen if you've been in a trial for a couple weeks now. And then, so on top of that, with all this data, we have to have some tools that actually make sense of it. And as we'll see, there's quite a few interesting tools to make sense of all that data over time. So you guys don't have to do a lot of thinking about how to put that all together. We do that for you. And because we're built on this foundation of micronutrition, you're going to find that Cronometer is customizable for just about any program, any style of eating, anything that really has to do with building a healthy diet. So yeah, and we're also secure. So later this, probably beginning of August, we're going to have 2-factor authentication come out. We believe that all the users own their own data. So at any point, you or any of your clients can delete their account, remove all their data from our system, and that's just what we believe. So we built our app around that type of, that value. And we're also end-to-end encrypted and do all the kind of latest security measures to make sure that that data is protected. We follow HIPAA guidelines, and for anybody interested in actual full HIPAA compliance, that would require a BAA signed between Cronometer and your organization. And so if you need that, you just feel free to reach out to sales@cronometer.com. So who's using Cronometer in a professional fashion right now? So there are a huge number of coaches, trainers, dietitians, small practices using us right now with their patients. We also work with larger organizations, some of which are pictured here. And they use us for everything from running their nutrition programs within like a medical hospital setting to clinical and academic research in universities and teaching hospitals and things like that. So that being said, that's everything I wanted to show you today in the slides so far. So what we're going to look at here is, back to the client list. I'm just going to open up. I'm just going to get this set up, and so you can see my the mobile app as well. So what we're looking at on the web page here is the Pro web portal. So when you sign in as a Pro, you're going to see your list of clients, and you're going to be able to kind of get in there with each of those accounts. Oh, hang on a second. Sorry. Little technical issues. Just got to restart this thing. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on your guys' audio because like I said, I think we can manage 3 conversations here. So if you guys wouldn't mind, I am going to just move that out of the way for now. I'll show you guys that in a second. So I've turned on your audios. If you guys wouldn't mind, I'll just call out your names real quick, and you can give me just a brief introduction about, how you heard about Cronometer and what your professional background is. And that'll help me really kind of go and show you the features that are going to matter to you guys. So Amy, you're top of the list here. Would you mind giving us a brief introduction?
Yeah, so Amy Covington, and I'm working in private practice. I'm kind of new into that right now. Mm-hmm. And I actually started out using a different program like this, but it definitely did not even meet the great things that Cronometer has. I believe I learned about it in one of the A&D magazines. They had listed different tools that you can use. And so I just thought, I'm going to check it out. And so far, I've loved it.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Cool. So Elizabeth, how about you?
Yeah, I am a professor at a liberal arts school. I'm also a dietitian and do a little bit of consulting with athletes, and that's how I first became familiar with Cronometer. Mm-hmm. Was a colleague had recommended it when they were doing some nutrition tracking with some of their athletes. And this last semester, I actually used it for a couple of my classes and had the students, when they kept food logs, they used it. And I wanted to get all of my students to use it this fall with more of the professional features so they can have access to a lot of the different micronutrients and so forth. So I'm just very curious about how to get my students all on that and ways that I can potentially set what all they have access to. Because there's a lot of information and I don't want them to go down any crazy rabbit holes, but I'm interested in some of those options.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. So we can, if you're doing students in a class, we have a couple more options we can talk about maybe towards the end of the webinar or outside that channel. Because we do a couple different things. If you're setting up, if you have like multiple semesters and a lot of students, we can set up a site license that allows them to just get the gold version. But if you want to control some of what they see, maybe professional's more what you're going for. So, so Kristen, I see that you're here. You can unmute yourself if you will, and if you wouldn't mind giving us a quick introduction, I'd appreciate it. You're still muted at the moment. Either way, it's cool if you want to, actually, hang on, let me check the chat here. There we go, from Kristen. There we go. My name is Kristen. I work at a private practice nutrition center. I'm active with clients this afternoon. Oh, okay, so you're just listening. Okay, fair enough. So I will have a recording of this up probably on our YouTube channel by the end of the week, maybe on Monday or so. So you will have the ability to go back and watch this again. So I'll just keep that in mind and I will just keep going. So what I want to show you guys first is, so you guys are seeing my screen okay, I assume? Yeah, I will take that as a yes, actually.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks. So what we're going to look at here is our mobile app side by side with our pro app. So the first thing I'm going to show you is that when a client, so I'll take a step back. When you add a client, and I guess some of you have already done this because you're already in trials and everything. So what you would do here is you just add a client, have some basic details, and you can just, that's stuff you generally get on intake, or you could have the client fill that stuff out later on. But you can, all you need is an email address. So you can have that, you know, as long as, basically, even if they don't have an account, we'll create one for them. But if they have a Cronometer account, when they log in, they'll get an invite from you, or an email invite, and they'll just ask to agree to share their data with you, and then you'll have access to their data and everything that I'm about to show you. We also have internal profiles, and that's for things like if you're doing studies that you don't actually want the individual in a study or whatever the case may be. If you don't want that individual to actually have access to the nutrition information that you're going to be logging for them, we've had this request in a number of different studies and things like that. You can create an internal profile here, and you can control who has visibility of that data. Now, later on, if you wanted to give that data over to the patient or the user, or whatever the case may be, you can do that. You can just assign it to an email later on. So it's pretty straightforward to add clients. And once you have added a client, what'll happen every time that you every time they log in, we're going to go to settings, branding. You can actually set up a simple kind of branding, identification for the user to see every time they log in. So now on this app here, we're going to be looking at a client of the pro that we're looking at on the web page. So I'm going to go ahead and tap that. And you can see that we show this branding a couple different places in the app, but generally when they log in. And so they'll get a sense that they know they're working with you through us and everything. We don't do specific white labeling for individual practices or anything like that. And so this is kind of the middle ground that we've reached, in kind of representing who they're working with in our app. So once you have a client who's logging food every day, you can just click on one of those on the list. You guys are probably familiar with the food log here. We get down to our, our kind of summary statistics down here, the calorie summary, the macro targets. Anything that you mouse over here is going to show you what the foods that are contributing to each of these macros, and any of the micros down here as well. You'll be able to see what foods are the major contributors. So those, it's helpful to spot problem areas or problem foods that they're eating if they're not sticking to a particular program. Now, the thing about when a user actually gets on that client list and agrees to share their data, they instantly get all of our gold features. And some of these I'll be pointing out throughout the presentation because both you and them will have access to those things. So this first one here is nutrition targets. We actually have started to in order to better communicate this stuff to individuals, we started taking nutrients and putting them in their functional groups and then scoring you on how well you have basically achieved that supported that function. So for example, immune support, you can see all the nutrients that are important in that particular function. We have if you want to see the research on that and the citations and all that, you can click on the icon for more information. But yeah, so that's generally what that is for gold users. You can also drop down here and see that we have nutrition ratios or nutrient ratios. Some of them are more important than others, or maybe you can customize the view here. But the real important thing for you guys, I think, is going to be how you're actually going to go about setting up an individual's account for whatever program you want them to follow. And now the responsibility, depending on how much you actually trust your patients, you can push some of this off on them, or you can actually do it yourselves. So basically, you go to the profile tab here, and you're going to have their body details, which the only thing that is maybe not straightforward here is our activity level. So in general, when setting an activity level, we try to capture the activity that you're doing above and beyond the basal metabolic rate, but not so much with exercise if you're logging exercise separately. So for example, I work from a home office, so I'm walking back and forth to the kitchen, for example. So, in that case, that is not a good activity that's going to be captured by anything else. So what I generally do for myself, and I log my exercise separately, I actually just set it to sedentary, because that's generally how I am outside of my exercise and things like that. If your user has a Fitbit or a device that's tracking their active calories, tracking their steps and things like that, I'd actually recommend that you just set this to none, or have them set this to none. And that way there won't be any double counting or kind of overages there. And then if you have a client or user that's very active, on top, maybe they work construction or just some job that's very active, they're not necessarily logging that as activity specifically, that's when it might make sense to move up to the higher settings here. But if you're working with athletes, like it's the chances are they're logging those workouts, or they're going to have something to track those workouts, so you can capture it that way. Body fat percentage here is another one worth mentioning. We use this in several calculations for our macros, which I'll show you in just a second. And this is estimated if the users never entered that data into our system, but if they do, we'll use that number instead. So the weight goal is the next thing. So you can essentially choose, or you set up their target weight, or if the user created their account, they'll have set that themselves. You can set a weight goal, which will just adjust their daily caloric target every day. So the deficit that they need to maintain, or the surplus they need to maintain in order to hit the weight goal that you may have set out for them. And we have a couple different options here. You can go basically in half-pound increments. So I think that works out to about 500 calories a day per increment, up or down. And then if we get down to the macronutrient section here, so this is where the kind of main setup, the main, kind of like how are they eating, what are they focusing on, that kind of thing on a macro level. The first question you can answer here is what kind of, how do you want them to track carbs? So I think the default is total carbs here. And we can also track net carbs as well. So, and we can allow you to track with sugar alcohols, or not count sugar alcohols towards your net carb total. So depending on where you fall in that debate, you can choose that option. So I'll just set it like that. So we have a couple different ways to track our macros and the way we adjust these things to your patient's needs. So for example, we start out, I think the default setting is macro ratios. And you can just come down here. I mean, this is all pretty straightforward. This is not new to you guys. You can change the ratios of each of the macros to get the amount of calories from each of these macros. And you'll see the percentages underneath there. But one of the things that's cool about this setting is it's actually a dynamic setting. So as your patient logs their weight over time, so maybe they lose 5 pounds in a couple months, they actually will, when they log that new weight, the energy totals, the macro targets will actually shift to take their new weight into account. And so we kind of shift around as their body changes, as they make progress through a program. Now, on the other hand, we have a fixed value setting here too. And essentially you can choose, fixed values for each of the energy target and the 3 macros. So you can say, and these won't change as, time goes on and maybe the body details change of that client. So you can manually adjust those as you go, or just have them set to a strict target. And what's interesting about this setting is, I'll show you how to do this in a second. You can actually, if you choose it, you don't have to have them hit a minimum of 75 grams of protein. You could actually have them hit a range. So it could be 75 to 90 or something like that. And again, I'll show you how to make those adjustments in a second. The final calculator here that we have is our ketogenic calculator. So what this does is it essentially is another dynamic calculator. So again, as your patient's body details change, it will update their targets. But what we do here to calculate the calories from each of your macros is we actually take a fixed amount of protein based on your kilograms of lean body mass. So that's where the body fat percentage measure comes in. And you can set that here, and then we'll multiply that out and get a gram amount. And then you can set a fixed number of carbohydrates per day in grams. So you'll notice also if I change that to total carbs, this will change to total carbs as well. So we can always track however you want to manage those carbs. And then finally, we have an athletic bonus. What you can do here is it's basically if you have basically allowing them extra carbs per every 50 calories of logged exercise. And so we have a couple just basic settings that you can choose from, or you can select custom here and then fill these out, whatever you like to see. So then we get down to nutrient targets. And so you were asking about, Elizabeth, I believe you were asking about customizing a view for a patient or a student who you don't necessarily want them to go down a ton of rabbit holes. You have a couple options here. This is probably your most fine-grained way to choose how to set up the display, but I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You have a visible column, which if you turn that off, then you won't be able to see the actual nutrient in that diary, daily diary. You won't see that in the little gauge or anything like that. And so you can choose that for all the nutrients that we track, and we don't have them all on by default. Some of the nutrients either aren't super commonly tracked, or there isn't a great amount of data, like iodine. You know, that isn't a well kind of tracked nutrient in a lot of the labs and databases that we use, at least up until recently. And so if you want to set up some custom values here, so you can check the custom checkbox and then click on any of the daily target, which is the minimum, and then the maximum value. You can edit those. Now, like I said, with fixed values above, what's going to happen, I'll show you real quick what that looks like. Oops. So I go to fixed values here. So I have an overall protein target of 75. So if I go to protein, you're going to see that my daily target is 75. But I've also set this maximum, I've done this previously, I've set this maximum of 90. And so what happens is on the diary, what you'll see in kind of the lower area where all the individual macronutrient information is, or micronutrient information is displayed, they're going to see they'll basically, if they go above that 75 target, they'll see green in that gauge, letting them know that they're within the threshold that you want them to be in. So you can actually set a threshold using the fixed targets as well, even though we only show the one option up here. Right. So that is a quick overview of how you'll be setting up like the different macros, micros, and all the things that really focus on the targets and everything. To set up their display at a higher level, you have a couple different options here. So in general in the diary, what you can do is you can turn off the calorie summary. So that's the macro and the calories in calories eaten and calories burned, and the caloric deficit display. You can turn that off, so that's not there. We also timestamp all our data as well. So when they're logging their lunch, we actually look at the time on the device. And you can always edit that later, but you can turn that on or off if you need that level of detail. And let's see. Oh, you can also, so we also have a setting here. If you don't want them to see calories, so generally what happens in the diary is we show calories on the far right here. But you can actually choose what they actually see. So if you're running like a ketogenic diet and carbs is really the focus, you can change that to carbohydrates, total or net, and then you can have them see exactly how many carbs each item that they have in the diary is actually contributing. Then we get down to diary groups. So you noticed I had a couple different diary groups in there. You can actually customize these and create up to 8 different custom groups. So that can be a meal schedule. That can be something for, I don't know, like tracking biometrics, for example, or anything else. And then, yeah, so you can customize those nutrition scores I mentioned before. We have a couple different versions or options here. And now, again, you also mentioned about choosing or kind of like highlighting certain information and hiding other information. So one of the ways you can highlight specific nutrients for them to pay attention to if they're in a class and you want them to focus on just a few things, you can customize up to 8 individual highlighted nutrient targets. And those are the ones you see right here, right? So theoretically, you could enable the highlighted nutrient targets, but disable everything else down here. And that way they wouldn't, have to look at that spreadsheet every time they open up their web page. The app is a little bit different. Like that stuff's kind of in the background and they won't be able to see it without actually navigating to it. So it might be a little less overwhelming that way. So that's display. Oh yeah, and you have a couple options for your nutrient balance gauges here. Right, so I'll pause there real quick. Do you guys have any questions or anything so far? And if I haven't addressed anything specific that you want to use the app for, let me know, and I'll jump right into that next. So Amy, yeah?
Yeah, so just going back to when you were talking about physical activity.
Yes.
I just need to clarify. So you said if, for example, they're using a Fitbit to track their physical activity,
yes,
then you can set that to sedentary, just to cover the typical movements throughout the day.
Yeah.
Does the Fitbit like put their physical activity into this program?
Yeah, so we actually integrate with the Fitbit and a number of other devices. I can show you that real quick.
Okay.
Over to the other side here. So from their account, what they can do if they go to settings, devices, these are all the devices that we integrate with. So
okay.
Yeah, most other items or things that we don't integrate with Apple Health or Google Fit. So we pull in calories from there too. And so if they actually have a device that's pulling that data in, I would actually recommend to go to set it to none. So because that will prevent, because again, it's just a multiple of the BMR to kind of capture some of that, and it's a fairly subjective thing. So I would very much recommend if they have a device, just have them set it to none.
Okay. What if you have someone that isn't tracking physical activity, but they don't want to track it, they don't want to put it in, but let's say, they do 30 minutes every day of aerobic exercise.
Right.
And you use the activity level to capture that?
You could. I mean, it's obviously a less efficient way than actually logging that. And we can log exercise. I'll show you how to do that in just a second if you want. And then, but what I would say is we also make that stuff super easy. So if they're doing that every day, they can log it once and then just copy and paste it every day without having to go through the rigmarole of doing that. But you could do that. You could bump it up to lightly active. I mean, if that's all the activity they're doing, or, if they're doing more, you could bump it up to moderately active. And then it's just, you kind of have to finesse it more to see how they're losing weight or gaining weight, depending on what their goal is. It's, again, it's a little subjective, but we have, other tools that are better for it,
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say, can I ask one more question, or should I wait?
Yeah, all good.
Okay. So one thing that's been really confusing for me, and I just don't know how to maybe understand. So the 3 displays where it's showing, activity, amount, that, what they've eaten. Yeah, the calorie summary.
Yes.
Yeah, will you just kind of explain what that's telling us right there?
Yeah, this right here. So what this is, so calories consumed. This is total calories consumed. So it's everything that is in the food log without subtracting anything out. So it has a little macro breakdown here. So 72% of the calories are coming from fat. What is that? 19 from carbs, and from protein about 9%. Then actually I'll add some exercise real quick. Training. Just add that. So you can see, actually set the, I'll do this to show you the full thing here. I'll set that to something higher. So now what you see here is the purple is the BMR, that's total calories from the BMR. And then you have the exercise, so that little bit of exercise. And then you have the, what is it? That's the activity level multiple of the BMR that I set in the options. Now, basically what we do here, then you calculate the deficit. So I've taken in 500 calories minus the burned, And now I have my daily caloric deficit for the day.
Okay.
And then if you have them say, okay, you have to, maintain a 500 calorie deficit every day. When this gets to 500, they know that they should stop eating, And you can also, if the math is something that they kind of balk at, what you can do on the profile, you can also switch this on, which is show weight goal and diary. And all that will do is just change the way we display it. We'll tell them how many calories they actually have remaining to eat. So instead of having to do that. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. So because I feel like I've put in my own estimated energy needs that I want them to follow, and then I haven't. Does that update also in this calorie summary? Or does it stay with what the program has already determined?
So when you say their estimated energy needs, what do you mean exactly? Do you mean the calories they need to eat, or?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So if you have set that up using any one of the macro settings that we talked about before, that will that should show up here just fine. But this is going to be independent. So if you had a specific energy level, so what you could do in that case, actually, so if you wanted this to reflect the calories burned, to reflect exactly how many calories they need to eat, so 2,375 here, what you could do is you could go to, go to profile, you'd set activity level to none, you'd set the BMR to custom, and that way you could choose exactly the calories to match that energy requirement too, so that they can basically zero out if they hit their calorie target, that what they're burning is. I don't actually know if that's what you want, but you could kind of play around with those settings to make it reflect what you want. So I'm not sure if I totally answered your question there, but
yeah, I think so. So just going back to this, the macronutrient targets, if I set one myself, that will reflect there, but not necessarily over in the calorie summary unless I do what you just showed me.
Correct. Yeah. This is just like the raw numbers. Think of it like gross profit versus net profit. It's just like anything that's in that food log, that's how many calories are in there. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I just felt like when I would put in their energy target in that middle, where it's just like the calorie, it didn't match. So, okay.
Yeah. So, what we do here, for example, you can see, it's kind of tiny. Let me zoom in. You can see that it actually says 331 net. So we do take that into account, and we do a little bit of math and say, okay, we know that, hey, I did X amount of exercise, so it's actually a little bit less. Your energy requirement target is actually a little bit less. So anyway.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Perfect. Elizabeth, did you have any questions?
Yeah, this is more about just creating groups. I saw that under clients, you can create a client group. So I imagine for my class, that would probably make sense to have a group. When I'm adding clients, would I then have to send an individual enter each of their individual emails? I'm just wondering how to get them all enrolled, because I'm wanting them to then fill out their profiles instead of me having to enter.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. And so in this interface, yes, you would have to send each individual invite. We're working on like a way to send bulk emails, but it's a touchy subject because you don't want to allow people to send spam. But that is something we're working on. We don't have it yet. Now, when I was talking about earlier, site licenses and things like that, this is where, if you just wanted them to have access to all the gold features, we could figure something out where if they logged in with a school email, we could detect that, give them gold without them having to do anything. And then they'll have the setup that you want them to have, though they'd still have to maybe disable and enable the view and some of the settings. So basically fill out the profile as you would describe it to them.
Yeah, thankfully my class sizes aren't huge, so it wouldn't be too bad to do that. But I think definitely maybe in the future having some sort of bulk option.
Yeah, we're working on all kinds of bulk actions.
Would definitely help. But yeah, as long as they can change set up their profiles themselves, that would be the main thing.
Yeah, they can get in there, they can change all that stuff up according to any guidelines you set, for sure. Cool.
Okay.
Adding a client group is super easy. You know, you just create the names, and you can even drag and drop people. You know, pretty easy to stay organized. Cool. So what I am going to move on to now. So do you guys do much with meal planning, or kind of like giving them some nutritional guidance as far as what to eat goes, or anything like that?
Yeah, I do. I don't give out set meal plans though, because they're a pain to to
Yes.
make.
Yes.
Everyone
And
says
so I really don't like doing that. But like I said, I was in research in this, so I'm new into working with clients one-on-one
gotcha.
in a private practice, and a lot of them want that. And so I'm like, okay, at the beginning that'd be good. I'd rather them learn how to do it themselves, honestly. But so yeah, so I haven't looked into that on this at all, how to meal plan. So it's definitely an interest of mine.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Elizabeth, I'm guessing no for you because you're mostly teaching students.
Yeah, I'm teaching students, though any way that I can at least provide some feedback for them. And I'm wondering would that be like through notes or whatever?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Could
Yeah, for sure. So actually, I'll answer that question, then I'll show you guys how to do the meal plans. I'll go through it quickly because it may not be an area of focus. But one thing you can do, so for example, on this, let me just jump to the next day. So it's basically the same. Yeah. So on any individual app, so let's say this is a student's day of eating that we're looking at right now. What I could do is I could say, I could basically put a note in as the pro, and then save that note. And now what you'll notice is, oops, sorry, misclick. That note is where, Jesus, I can't click on my own phone here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get there. Oh, there it is. So yeah, that note actually shows up pretty much in real time. You just have to refresh the screen. And so you could add notes to any day that you wanted to. And you also have the option, there's a little photo icon here. You can actually add photos as well. So if there's like any material or content that you need to share with them, you can do that here. So,
can they also add photos, or is that just us? Okay,
yeah,
so they could take a picture of their meal and add it?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay, that's helpful.
For sure. So the other thing that's worth noting here before I get to the recipes is we also track a ton of different biometrics. So they can track any one of the list that you see here, may or may not be relevant. But what's really cool is that if there's anything you want them to track on a regular basis that we don't do out of the box, you'll see down here, I know it's kind of small. I don't think they zoom in on the dialog boxes now. You can see I can create custom biometrics. And so we've had these used like any number of ways. So like, if someone has like if they're managing pain, you could have them enter in a pain scale, or you could have them enter in symptoms if they're doing something like that. Someone asked me about adding their bench press and squat, weight for their resistance training. That can be tracked as well as a biometric. And then when we get to the charts, I'll show you can actually graph all of that stuff out over time. And that also can be time-stamped too. So if you're tracking symptoms and trying to correlate it with meals or whatever, you can do that. And yeah, so to create one of those biometrics, you just click on the plus button, you enter a name, and then the unit of measurement. Again, that could be a scale. It could be a specific, metric unit if you're doing blood levels or whatever. And then you add it and it shows up in this list here. Okay. So let's see, that's that. So I want to show you guys recipes and meal planning. So
all right, can you just show me really quick how you got to the biometrics? I think I looked away when you clicked on it.
No
oh,
worries.
Right there. I see it.
So
okay.
add biometrics right up here. Yeah, it's all good. And in the green plus button right on that dialog.
Great. Okay.
Cool. And again, your students will have access to that too. So if you have a biometric you want them to create, instead of creating it for all of them, you can just tell them how to do it. Right. So I want to run through this very quickly. So on the mobile app, we have a barcode scanner. We're getting close on time here to make sure I get through everything here. But we we have a barcode scanner on a mobile app. I'll show you that if we have time, but essentially what it does is you can scan an item, and if it's not in our database, if it's in our database, it just shows up. But if it's not in our database, we actually will ask you to take pictures of the nutrition label and the front so that we know what the product is. And we'll read in all the data from that nutrition label. So you don't actually have to enter that stuff manually. And so if the students or your patients or whatever are scanning foods, and it actually makes it much more, much less effort on them to log things that we don't have in our database. And then what's really cool is that information gets sent to our curation team, and then we verify it for accuracy before making it available to everybody. So it's a nice little convenience feature that we have on the mobile app. And so custom foods would be the things created from that barcode scan. But if you ever had to come in and create a custom formulation of a food, or some kind of custom thing that we can't read in, or what have you, you can come in here and you basically do a few different things. You create a title. You have a category and tags, so you can say, what food group or category this belongs to, whether it's vegetarian friendly, and then it helps our search algorithm in a couple different spots in the app, just sort out the food. And then notes here, if needed, you can put in some serving size information. But then really what you'd be doing is just entering all that stuff manually. So again, I always recommend to people, if you have something with a barcode, scan it and take pictures, and you'll probably get all the information in that way. So this custom food editor doesn't get used too much in the context of the barcode scanner. But the custom recipes is really where a lot of the power is. So what you're going to get here is, I'm just going to open up a recipe that I've created previously. So again, same format. You could create a category, set some tags. In the notes, this is more appropriate for like preparation instructions. You could create a number of different serving sizes. So dividing up the total recipe into whatever makes sense for that recipe. And then you're adding ingredients down here. And we haven't gone over our search function a ton, but basically you're just going through our database, searching for your food. And once you get those things added, you're going to see all that nutrition down here. But you can also view it based on whatever serving sizes you've created up here. All well and good. You see that. That's great. Now, what I can do is I can create another recipe with, say, a couple of other custom recipes within it. So I have, these are two custom recipes I've created, and that's going to be my lunch for the day. And then I can take that a step further and say, okay, well, I'm going to package up all this stuff into a whole meal plan. It's a bad example, but here's one. So breakfast, lunch, some dinner, and some snacks. And then now, so what that looks like in practice then is I'll go to an empty day here. I can add a food. I'll search meal, or I could just go to the custom tab. Let's go to day 1. I add it. And now you can see that all my nutrition information is filled out for the day. And in order to really know what I'm eating, all I have to do is right click, explode recipe. I can drag and drop. And then when I want to see what I'm actually eating, I just go ahead and explode. Oops. I can just go ahead and explode those items individually. And now I have a whole day laid out for me. And that took me, the logging part of it anyway, it took me less than a minute. Now, where this gets interesting is that if you have your pro account, you create a bunch of these kind of recipes that work for whatever program you guys have. What you can do is up here in this 3-dot menu on a client page, you could go to share foods and recipes. So now you could come in here, and anything that you've created on your account, the custom foods or recipes, you can share that with the individual. And now the individual, depending on how much you trust them, can actually manage all those days of your meal plans individually. So they can just kind of log them, expand them, see what they're eating. And then we have a feature up here called Mark Day Complete to say, yep, I followed this plan. It's a way, when we get to the charts, it's a way to filter out data for maybe incomplete days or empty days. And so yeah, so that's how we support meal planning. You can build basically daily meal plans, and we're planning some larger stuff for meal plans as well, some larger features in the future. So that's how you would do that on our app. And again, it's obviously a lot of front-loaded effort, but it is a great. Individually, I love it because I can prepare a whole like kind of diet and then just don't think about logging it every day. Cool. So let me think. Is there anything else? Oh yeah. So we'll get to charts now. I think this is a good place to go. So any other questions before I move on?
Just really quick, the meal planning, is that something they can do themselves as well?
Yes.
Do they have access to do that? Okay.
Yep, they sure can. So they can put together those plans. Now, you will not, so they would have to have logged it to their diary for you to see it. So if they've created a meal plan, you won't be able to see it until they log it to their diary. So you won't be able to check it out, tell them it's right, and then they'll have to put it to their diary to see. So
okay,
cool. So now we're going to get into the data analysis side. So we have got a number of different charts here. I'm just going to jump to manage charts to give you an overview, and then we'll go through the charts themselves. So these are our kind of standard charts in our library here. As long as there's data, we can show it. So we have a calories consumed, which is just a breakdown of the macros and total calories. A single biometric, so like we were talking about before, any custom biometric or any of our standard ones. Single nutrient, so the nutrient average for the day. Nutrition scores, these are getting more specialized now. The glucose ketone index, if that's something that's interesting to you. But what's really interesting down here is you can actually create custom charts. So I can create a custom chart. I can add two different axes. I'll figure that out later. You can choose any biometric, any score, or any nutrient that we track, and you can actually see what happens over time with these data points. And again, we have this stuff time-stamped. So, we have cases where people track their blood glucose after meals and see what happens based on the time of the day and everything. So anyway, we'll just jump back to the charts, see what they look like. And you'll notice, so you can see I have a couple dark shaded areas here. We also track fasting. And the dark shaded areas are periods where this account is currently in a fast, or was in a fast historically. I have basically a continuous fast running on this account. So you can see here we have the breakdown of macros, what the total calories looks like. You can choose basically any time frame. As long as there's data, we can display it. You can choose how to filter the days. So you can see I have a few empty days in here. I can choose non-empty days to kind of fill that out. And again, you can also filter on those completed days that I mentioned earlier, if they have checked those things in the diary. Our biometric chart, you can see all the ones that we track. Immune support, and this is kind of what our custom charts looks like as well. So you can see, basically how things correlate over time. There's not great data for some of this stuff, but so that's our charts feature. And also you can download this stuff, anything in any chart. So even the charts you create, you can download that stuff to a CSV file or an Excel file for any further data analysis that you might want you or your students to do. So then we get into our nutrient report. So the charts, you're visualizing data over time and how it's changing and everything. What we're doing in the nutrition report is we're actually looking at long-term nutritional averages over the selected time frame. So, you guys know that the long-term deficiencies are really what affect your health. And so this is where you can actually see that much more clearly than just by looking at individual days on the diary. So, you can set any time frame. You can, again, filter on those days. You can even exclude supplements, the food items in our database that are specifically marked as supplements. And that'll allow you to see how much of their nutrition they're actually getting from like whole foods or just, real foods. So that's what you can do here. And again, you can even look at what the contributors are for over that time frame. So what foods are, contributing most. And this is, again, another way to spot those trouble foods. Then we have fasting. So fasting is pretty straightforward. You can turn it on, and then you can schedule a new fast. It's really straightforward. You set a duration. You show, or you can set how often you want it to repeat. And down here you can set the time and the dates and everything, and that's just another way to set up the duration. And once you add that fast, it'll show up in your schedule, and on the mobile app, it actually shows up in one of our widgets up here. And then down below, we've got all your history, which is quite long on this one. And then we can use that data however you need in the charts. Then we'll go to snapshots. This is just another place if there's like progress photos. Generally, that's what this was built for, but it can be used to upload any kind of image you want. And both you and the user can actually do that either way. Notes. Now, this is going to be something that's only visible to you, the pro. This is not something that the user will see. So usually this is the case where you have multiple professionals working on the same patient. You can come in here, maybe, physician A made a change. They just want to note it somewhere so that the other physician working on it has a place to look in the account anyway. So that's what that's for. And let's see, Elizabeth, do you have a question? I see that the mic's unmuted, so.
Oh, no, I just forgot the
That's okay, that's all right, that's okay. I was just trying to be attentive. So there's a couple other things that I want to show you. So we actually have a report generator, so I don't know how much you guys are going to have to deal with EMRs. Maybe that's more for you, Amy. We don't integrate with any EMRs per se, but we do generate PDFs and documents that you can upload to those EMRs. It's generally a messy kind of like market, so we haven't necessarily found a good way to integrate with a vast majority without spending all our time on it. So, but if you print this report, so I have everything enabled here, so we'll just go through what we actually present. So at the very top, you have the patient's date, or data rather, and you basically get a nutrition report for whatever time frame you specify. So those are the nutritional averages. And then down below, we'll print out all the charts that you have selected. And then we show every day, we will show you the content of a day, the food log, the information, the macros, the micros, everything. And you can use that to print out, maybe communicate with your patient, or do with it what you will. Then we have a couple other options up here on the patient level. So if you work with people who have eating disorders and you don't want them to see any calorie information whatsoever in the app, on the web page, anything, you can use the restrictions. You just turn it on and you save it. And all this information here, the calories on any part of the app and the web page, that it'll just be gone. Like you can still see what you logged and log your food and all that kind of thing, but there will be no calorie information anywhere. So it's just we built that upon request from a number of the people that we work with. Export data. So we already went over share foods and recipes. You can export any data that you see in the app basically to a spreadsheet. So this includes the daily nutrition totals, the servings like the food log itself, exercise, biometrics, and notes. And you can do that over any time frame. Cool. I'll stop there again. So we're getting towards the end of the presentation. So any other questions?
Yeah, just a question on that last bit about turning it off so that you don't see calories anywhere. Yes. Is that also something we could have done beforehand when we were making, what we want them to see?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. So after you send the invite, I believe you can. Once you send the invite, you can just turn this off. You just go into the client, turn it off, and they'll have when they actually sign up for the app and get the app or web page or whatever. Yeah, they won't see anything. So okay, that is an option, but it turns off everything. You can still see everything as a pro, but Yeah, they won't see anything.
Oh, so it turns everything, not just calories off.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'll show you what it does. I don't like to do
Okay.
it. It takes some setup, but it's all right. Let me see.
Oh, that's okay. I just was curious if earlier we're shutting off calories, why would we need to do that? Like, is that just two ways? But if it shuts everything off, that makes sense.
One more. I'll get this right. 1 second. Okay, here you go. So, so I've just turned. I think I did it on the right client. So now what you see is none of the items that are logged here actually have any calorie information. Calories burned, calories eaten, whatever. There's no widgets up top anymore. And if I go to the chart or the trends, yeah, it says it's been disabled by my professional. So
okay.
And there's all these little nooks and crannies in the app where we show calorie information too. That's all gone there too.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome. Any other questions? Sweet. Well, we're just about out of time. I guess we're finishing up a little bit early. You know, if you guys have any other, any other questions that come up as you're using the app, feel free to email me or support@cronometer.com, and we'll get those questions answered. We're super responsive, especially to our pros. And yeah, if there's anything else we can help you guys with, just let us know. There's going to be a brief survey after this webinar just to, see if there's anything we can improve on, or if there's anything that you'd like to see in the app that would help you guys, have a better experience. So yeah, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was very helpful.
Great.
Thank you.